Welcome to Tales to be Told in the Dark, and I believe it's episode 28 we're up to now. I have made in total about 50 minutes across two voicemails for Karen of Sun and Moon Family United channel, so you can find me talking on her channel as well. Pretty much on the same lines as I'm talking here, so that there's an overlap, but it's about spreading the message, bringing awareness to as many people as possible of things. And some things are so blatantly obvious that I wonder why so many don't even see the most obvious and start going in a bit deeper. A case in point, just lately, I keep seeing titles of videos across various channels with the name Russell Brand. All I'm going to say on this, I'm trying to stay neutral and objective and not bring in personal opinion. But I will share an observation with you. The name Rustle. Now, think of it as Rustle, like when you'd rustle up something. And a brand is like something you would mark cattle with, or something that the retail trade would be trying to sell you. It's a brand, like a brand name. So a rustle is like a hustle. If you know anything about Admiralty law, or the perception that seems to be coming from the control system, the majority of humanity are seen as chattel, as cattle, as ants, as something lesser, and therefore should be herded and influenced by certain characters that would appear to be we of the people, as it were. If you wish for my personal opinion, not so much an opinion, something feels off. To me, and this is the personal opinion part, it comes across as trying too hard, as overacting, as if compensating for something that's not quite genuine about the whole act. Just my thoughts on that subject, and that's it, case closed as far as I'm concerned. I have nothing more to say on the matter, because it is where the attention goes. The energy flows. And I have no desire to look at any more channels or videos that are going to discuss that topic. But yes, in some ways it is a little bit interesting, as far as seeing one of the mechanisms that is employed in the way humanity can be influenced and shaped. And of course, divide and conquer as well. And the agenda of the hidden hand that may want something, that always plays the pincer movement. If you think of like the dividers or the compass, they're actually joined at the top. So you could think in terms of the business world, where you can trace everything back through Yahoo Finance, and you'll find one of two companies, either BlackRock or Vanguard. And of course you'll find that the shareholders of one are part of the other, but it's all kept secret, so you can't find out the actual names. But the pattern is the same with so much, that it comes down to just one or two. And there are plenty of outer layers that, if you're so inclined and materialistic, you can be a very useful tool of the hidden hand. But of course, it does come at a huge price, especially if the stage has been set where you are basically a brand or a product, and you have been invested in by this control system, this hidden hand. And of course, they want to get what they feel is their entitlement because they have made an investment and a speculation. They don't play the game to lose. They try and set it up as a win-win. And of course, it's all on lies, deception, and half-truths. Often, you'll have characters that are making all the right noises and exactly what a certain part of a population wants to hear. And it would be, well, look, this is someone who's in the know, who's in the film industry, a celebrity, so he must know what he's talking about. And but hold fire. This is another one of these patterns to watch for. You'll find everything has something about it which is to lure you into it. That can be a product. There's always trying to sell you something, so they will always have an element that looks attractive to it to lure people in. It's the adversary, which is the advertisement, because it's an adversary to the mind. If you listen carefully to words like that, adversary, advert, you start to see that the words are not coincidental in their double meanings. Lana A LaBonte has come up with a brilliant, it's similar to the Tales to be Told in the Dark. I've actually put her last one, which is voicemail conversations, and I said, you really should, this is profound, turn this into a video. And she knows what she's doing, and she has, and far better than I could do with my limited computer skills and things. Which reminds me, I had something that would seem to have been a problem in that I've got PDF files on this device, which I would either have to write out by hand, which would take rather a long time, considering one document is I think it's about 52,000 words. That's just one document. Then, of course, I would need sufficient pens and paper to actually write the thing out. The other alternative would be to go somewhere, which, as it stands, it would be an hour and a half walk each way, minimum. And that's not with any guarantee that I'm going to find somewhere to attach the phone and print off the files. But nature, as it were, or the universe does provide. It's like the answer will come. I've just put out a virtual post-it note, and sure enough, the answer has come in the fact that there is a laptop here which I can hook the phone up to, and I can use it basically like the phone as a hotspot, so the laptop can connect, and I can download these files, which are public domain anyway, and it's non-commercial. It's Wagner's prose works, which I've made a start on, and very revealing and as relevant today as when they were first written in the 19th century. From about 1835 onwards up to about 1881, I think it is. Very revealing, and I'm a great believer in transparency. There's a particular essay that Wagner wrote, which is often cited but never quoted for some reason. And I have written this out and I have read it. It's already in a playlist on the other channel, the Bookner 200 Fab Art Productions channel. And the playlist is called Wagner's Prose Works. I'll put a link in the description. There's a red pill reading in there, which covers the particular book. There was also 18 years later, after that essay was written, there was a follow-up book which is equally and probably more prophetic and revealing about the way the hidden hand operates. And it is deemed as culturally important. It is public domain, so there is no problems in reading it. The problem would become when it comes to the discussion, the old adage about find out who your enemies are by who you cannot criticize. I'll leave that there anyway. Now, I was listening, this is a related topic, I was listening to Dr. Narco Longo and Robert Phoenix on Old World Florida channel, and Robert Phoenix mentioned and reminded me about the old black and white silent first Dracula film, which is called Nosferatu. I will put the link into the Old World Florida channel on this one. It's about part way through when Robert Phoenix mentions this. And in the discussion with Dr. Narco Longo, they talk about the archetype facial features of this Nosferatu character. It goes further than that if you look at the way it's filmed, that even the shadows of this vampire creature is it's very revealing. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I'd completely forgotten all about this, but it is what I would call a Mandela effect that I can personally testify to. Because I remember watching this film, it was when the television station Channel 4 first started, I believe. So it's around about 1980, 1982, if I remember rightly, and there was only 3 television stations to choose from at the time: BBC One, ITV, and then parts of the day, or I think just in the evening, BBC Two would then start broadcasting. It wasn't 24-hour, 7 days a week television like it is now, with hundreds of channels to choose from, but some of them are +1s or +24s, and there's actually a lot less than there would first appear. But anyway, at the time there was only 3 channels, which then there's an exciting new channel called Channel 4. And they did fill a niche with sci-fi and things. There was a very good series. The character was then featured in, I think, one of the music channels called Max Headroom. And in the television series, if I remember rightly, it's a private detective, and he's looking into this sort of integration of human and computers. It's very revealing. It's almost like what you'd call a truth drop about the way the future is going. Predictive programming, I think, is the other term for it. So anyway, this Nosferatu film, I remember seeing this, and I didn't sort of join the dots, as it were, and it did stick in my mind. And this Nosferatu character in this film has a pendant round his neck with a 6-pointed star. Now, I'm sure that you can still find this film somewhere on YouTube, no doubt. And I remember looking. It must be several years ago now. I can't even remember when, but it was on YouTube that I was looking, and I went right through the film, and it's like, it's not there. That pendant round the neck of Nosferatu is no longer there. That's strange. Because I was going to point to that at the time. So to me, that's a Mandela effect, because hand on heart, I can clearly and distinctly remember that. It's stuck in my mind. This is something else that sticks in the mind. This was something Lana A LaBonte has spoke about, that when something sticks in your mind, there is a reason. You may not know the reason why at the time, but something will present itself and you'll go, yes, because that will be readily there in the mind. It's stuck there for a reason. I suppose you could say it's like a bookmark. So it's like when something else you'll see, and then it's like, that's why that's stuck in my mind. It's to do with whatever the topic happens to be, and that was the case with this pendant. So I thought that was very interesting. That was nice to get this reminder, because I'd completely forgotten about that. I don't say I actually think about Dracula films in any shape or form very often at all. What I will say about all the Dracula films, the underlying message that always comes across consistently, apart from this vampire has no reflection, which implies that it is very shallow, and of course it's a parasite and a bloodsucker. But this Dracula character is described as the Prince of Darkness. By that very definition, that would imply that this vampire is not at the top. There must be something above that. But something else that also comes out that's consistent in every Dracula film, that is that the servants of this Prince of Darkness, when their time and their usefulness is over, this Dracula character never comes along and saves them. They're expendable. And should you ever be approached by something that would seem to be too good to be true, or something being offered from certain clubs and exclusive membership organisations, shall we say, that it may not be a good idea to accept any invitations, because you could find yourself getting into situations where you are compromised, because this entire system would seem to be held together by blackmail, by fear, by basically probably manufacturing and creating dirt upon people that could be leaked out if they don't toe the line. I feel one of the most obvious ones that is mentioned would be in the UK, when the political system, when they talk about the party whip system. To me, that seems to suggest that there is some sort of very sinister way of getting politicians to toe the line, shall we say. It sounds all rather dubious and unpleasant anyway. It just feels that way, and that's the thing to always go by. If something doesn't feel right to you, it doesn't matter whether you have external facts that would indicate and confirm or would indicate the opposite. If the gut feeling, and it's important to check in that where the feeling is coming from, not from the mind. But if something you feel inside of yourself is guiding you and saying something doesn't feel right about this, my advice is to always go with that internal compass that is guiding you. That is the Christ consciousness, and the Christ consciousness is the power and the wisdom of God. And what is God? God is the Creator. God is your own wonderful human imagination, to use a Neville Goddard quote. Imagination is creation. That is the ability to create. That is something that this control system seems to be lacking as well. Now, if you look at the way that God or the Creator, whatever you want to call it, source, shall we say, is described, it's an all-seeing, all-knowing and omnipresent. For something else to try and usurp that and set itself up as a false God, it would require the ability to be all-seeing and all-knowing. Now, we are in a material realm where everything is in the material, everything is in the solid, factual perspective. Hence, all the cameras, all the ways of tracking, all the methods of spying, basically monitoring every move you make, every time you carry a mobile device, whether you set it to have location on it or not. You can guarantee that built into a sub-layer that probably the public can't even get to, there will be something that is monitoring, listening in, recording, no doubt activated by keywords being said and voice recognition. These are just things to bear in mind. I'm not saying be fearful and shun all these things. At the end of the day, they are a tool. I would personally defend, this might sound strange to a lot of people, I would personally defend YouTube. Because it is, at the end of the day, its usefulness and the positive aspects to it, from my perspective, far outweigh the implied negatives. If all this is true, that they can locate you and find you and all these things that can be done and all the sort of implications of what could be done, well, if it was going to happen, it would happen. He says, I mean, this could be my last video, just saying that. I'm sort of saying this tongue in cheek because I'm also aware that if I'm thinking that way, where you're at is what you attract, and I would then be drawing that sort of energy towards me. So I'm sitting here saying this with a big smile on my face because it is about being fearless, as Jason of Archaic says. The way I've described this before is the irony, the divine comedy of it all it lies in the fact that no matter how infinite and how expansive the universe, the U-inverse is, there is still no room for doubt and fear anywhere in the internal universe. Because they will just grow like a cancer. And it will then manifest it could actually manifest as cancer. The best analogy I can give for this one, it would be Rudolf Steiner. It would be like saying, why is there a meadow there? Oh, the meadow's there because the cows are there. Which is ridiculous. No, the cows have gone there because the meadow is there. In other words, for cancer to, or any sort of, anything that's going to be corrosive to the physical body, will be thought manifested by what you impress upon your body from the thoughts you have. If you are in fear and in negative states, then you are setting up the conditions for certain things to then take root and take hold. It's exactly the same with nature. If the soil has to be, the conditions have to be right, the soil has to be fertile. So if you wish to attract something that is acidic and parasitic and devouring, then by all means do be in that negative fear state, because you are setting up the right conditions for something to then take hold, and it would be of your own doing by the thoughts you create, and which will of course be down to what you are taking in and how you feel about what you are taking in. A lot of these topics would seem to be very alluring, history being one of them. Giants, yes, they are fascinating topics. But as much as anything else, they can become distractions because they are all external of you. And ultimately, they are actually steering you away from going inside yourself. The best example I could give you to this is if you take the five senses in this sensible world. So you've got sight, sound, taste, touch, and what's the other one? Taste, touch. Oh, and smell, of course. Yeah. But it could be argued that taste and touch, or taste has come off from touch because you can't taste without touching. You pick something up with your hand to put in your mouth food-wise, for example, then you've already employed the touch before the taste. So you could argue that there's only 4 actual senses rather than 5. But that saying in spiritual circles, as it were, about all the answers are within, go within inside oneself. The best way I feel that can be explained, and I feel it does need to be explained a lot more, because I feel a lot of this, it may be that this may be new to a lot of people that may stumble across channels like this, but they have this openness, this willingness to experience something new, because they're starting to see something doesn't feel or seem right about that external world. The penny is starting to drop, as it were. So now if we take those 5 senses, instead of using them externally, now they are expressed in everyday sayings like, I see what you're doing here, I hear you, I've got a taste for this now, I'm on the trail, I can smell whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a physical thing. It's often in this sense where applying this sort of terminology as a figure of speech, as it were. Or I've got my finger on the pulse. I'm in touch with my spiritual side. Things, those sort of types of sighing. It's when you're using those senses inward, and it's a very good thing to do to, as much as anything else, probably the best example of this one would be if you've had a meal that you've really enjoyed and it's like, wow, that was really nice. I could eat that again. Now it said that it takes, and it does seem to be the case, it takes about 20 minutes for the signal to come up from the gut or from the intestines to the brain that says, don't send any more food down. We've reached saturation point here. And what often happens is, if you go round to have a second helping or whatever, when it's now put in front of you, that you sort of look at it and think, I don't really want this now. Because the signal has reached the brain. Now, that is one very good example of where you can tune into your body and improve that dialogue. So you're not overeating and you're not giving into greed and temptation. Less is best is often a good saying with such things. I mean, it is tempting. I totally understand it. I get the addictions to foods and things, and yes, I agree. They taste gorgeous. Some of these things, absolutely. We're driven by taste buds in this reality anyway. But there's that saying. I think it might be from the Book of Thomas, or it might be in the Bible itself. What is sweet to the taste is bitter to the belly, and what is sweet to the belly is bitter to the taste. What that means is your gut feeling, your Christ consciousness that knows different. Now, sugary donuts would be a weakness for a lot of people. Anything like that, it's like, oh yeah, I can't eat enough of those, or they're just gorgeous. But to the physical body, they're very harmful, and they're deliberately made to be tempting by design, of course, because you have these physical bodies which are a wonderful, wonderful machine. So often taken for granted how truly wonderful they are when you consider that they self-heal. You haven't actually got to put any conscious thought into healing the body. It just does. If it gets a cut, a paper cut or whatever, and it will just reseal itself. The skin will grow back together, and it will fuse itself back together and renew itself. And actually, over a very short period of time, your entire body structure, every cell will renew. So I think it's, if I remember right, it's every 2 years. You're actually or 7 years it might be. You're in a completely new shell. It just doesn't seem that way because you're so close to being in you, as it were. You are an eternal spirit, and these physical bodies are basically just the vehicle to operate. I mean, it makes perfect sense. This is a material realm, so you need a physical body to operate in a material reality. And we are basically guests, so when it talks about Christ and the host, I mean, I've read that the other way as a sort of possession thing when I was taking it too literally, but now, thanks to the Neville Goddard teachings and similar, and also seeing that we're in a realm of duality and contrast, that it actually refers, the hosts are these physical bodies, these avatars, and the Christ, well, there is only one, and it is one that is in every one of us, speaking for oneself, you could say. and it applies equally to every one of us. There is only one, but it is one within oneself, if that makes sense. This is the thing, on the negative hidden hand side, it does lead back to one, as it were. One organisation or two organisations at best, like BlackRock and Vanguard. But in the metaphysical, in the positive, creative side, it is one but expressed in multiple forms. Why? Because it can. Because it is infinite. All things are possible to he that believes, is another saying. It's whatever you create, it becomes, it is. By the very implication of having a perception that there is a hidden hand that is pulling strings and offering scripts, orchestrating and manipulating things. By that very definition, and it looks to be a structure that operates in this manner. And if you think about it, these things are all non-living. Things like the government, the church, the local government, the political party, you name it. All these things, they're always the some things, but they're not living beings. They're just concepts. They're entities that are not living. And these not living things are given life as a concept that then starts dictating to living beings on how you should or shouldn't be. That's how ridiculous things are. And all of these entities have something about them, like a donut. They have an attractive sweet side that masks something very unpleasant and corrosive that is not in your best interest, not in my best interest, not in anybody's best interest except those that are orchestrating things. Now, you may want to join the other side, and yeah, you might do very well out of it in a material sense, but remember, you'd be dealing with a trickster, of course, and the deal you may strike is eternal, or is the promise of eternal life, but then you might think, oh, that means I can do anything I want, and then you get arrested, and then you get a life sentence in prison. How would that feel about having an eternal life for you? I think you'd end up begging to die and wanting to die, because if there's no chance of parole or ever getting out, and you've got a life sentence and you've got eternal life in that way, it's not that that's possible in that way, but in the physical sense. But I think you can get the idea of where the trickery would come in. It's working on false promises and things anyway. So yes, going back to the Nosferatu, just to finish up. The facial features of this Nosferatu also, a slang expression for a hook nose would be to call it a beak. Now, one of the main symbols of this hidden hand is the eagle, which obviously has a hooked beak. It's a bird of prey. It has two wings, obviously. It's a winged beast. And when you see the nature of this hidden hand, it definitely has two wings. It plays two sides. And it is the thing in the middle between those two wings. You know, and you can see it politically. You can see it with different sects and cults of different religions. giving the impression that they're opposites when in fact they're actually working for the same false entity thing. And just like an eagle, this hidden hand will try and get its claws in and just grab and shred and take. It will just swoop in and feel entitled to just help itself. So you can see why they use the eagle. You'll see it in churches. It's the lectern that the big heavy Bible is placed on for the readings. It's often an eagle there. That's just one of many cults. That may be a shock to some of you, but you've only got to look at the etymology of the word church. It comes from the word kirk, a Scottish or Gaelic word, which can then be traced to Greek. Incidentally, Greek actually comes from Gaelic. And it's basically comes. It's a remnant of something that's became a memory of Atlantis when sea levels were a lot lower. But just think about rising sea levels. That means you have less land, which then means people are then starting to be herded, rustled up into smaller areas. There is plenty of evidence, especially in North America. This was something Jason on Archaics was talking about only last night, I think it was, where oil companies used to report findings, but they no longer do because it stops the business side of things whilst archaeologists, or on the pretext of them being archaeologists, but more likely to destroy things that would be glaringly fly in the face of the official narrative of history, shall we say. 2 miles below the surface, totally buried. A thief will always cover his tracks, is the saying. So I've got to backtrack here. I've lost my train of thought. Yes, so Greek. Yes, the Greek. The word church comes from the word Circes, which is a mythological archetype which would lure people into a room and lock the door and corrupt their minds or do other depraved things, which is pretty much a religious church service when you boil it down to its absolute basics. Now, some of you may not agree with that, but I'm only giving you a perspective based on what I've observed and what I feel about things. Because if you think any religion or any church is true, any external one, they're always approved by a nation's government. They work hand in hand, and you'll notice that the incumbents never speak out against the government. They're pre-scripted sermons, and it's there to lure and to distract. They are basically a form of cult. The word religion is basically re-lie of the jinn. They're not what they appear to be, but that's perfectly fine if you want to defend something you believe in. You want to nail yourself to that dogma. That is entirely your choice, but it does become your crucifix when you nail yourself to such things, and it is willful ignorance to do so, especially when it looks so obvious when you look at the Bible that it does seem to contradict it doesn't actually contradict. That's down to the rewritings by the priests to fit a certain agenda, but they're not that good at writing things that there's always a trail left for you to find the way home, as it were, which you have actually left there for yourself because you are an aspect of the Creator. The Creator is playing all the parts. This is something Neville Goddard talks about. You are an aspect of Source in an individual form. This omnipotent, omnipresent, creative power can certainly appear in infinite forms all at the same time. It is basically humanity. But it isn't just humanity, it's every living thing. Where else would a living God reside but within the living? But this reality twists everything, and people end up in an urn through earning a living. You see the clever way, things are done with the words and the word play on this world stage. So this is rather a long one, I'm afraid. But I hope you found this useful. I hope that it's given you plenty to weigh up and consider. And my advice is, if something resonates with you, don't just listen to it once, don't just listen to it twice, listen to it 3 times over. Impress it upon yourself. Take whatever you want from this, and if you're another YouTube channel and you want to create a video and you want to use anything that's said here, I freely give you permission to do it. I can't speak for YouTube, but from my perspective, if you want to quote anything, it doesn't matter about naming where you got it from. I really don't care. It's about the essence. It's about the message to hopefully wake up more of humanity to this reality, and how it is humanity that is the gatekeeper of oneself. It's all about coercion. It's all about illusion. It is all about twisting things, making things appear alluring when they're actually very sinister, because we're in a realm of contrast, don't forget. But it's also down to perspective and how you feel about things as to whether you see them as sinister or whether you see them as something that is good. And you can focus either way to anything, pretty much. But just keep in mind that things like YouTube, they're a tool for you to use. And why not use it for something good that is benevolent, rather than use it for one-upmanship, as it were, to try this egoic route. That's just playing into the hands of this non-living entity side of things, and effectively you're becoming a pawn in the game, and effectively you would become, as it were, controlled opposition, because you're playing right into the hands of the hidden hand. But if you're doing it from the heart, and it's coming from the heart, and it's with the right intentions of benevolence, be no violence, then it will hopefully resonate with those that are on the right frequency to hear it. So I'm going to say love to you all, and apologies that this has gone on for almost 50 minutes, but I feel this is all things that are relevant and worth saying in the present moment, and hopefully it will help and guide you. On a final note, any donations to this channel are greatly appreciated. This reality is, and the system makes things as difficult as possible, but it is possible to overcome these things. But it's all about balance, and and also saying there are times when we all need help, and it's all reciprocal. So I'm hoping that this will help many of you out there, even not necessarily something I am personally saying, but said through other channels as well. So love to you all until the next video.